welcome to my knitting slash crafting slash anything else I kind of fancy talking about podcast. My name is Liz. You can find me on Instagram as The Groucho Liz, and welcome. If you are a returning viewer, thank you very much for coming back. If you are a new viewer, thank you for joining me. That's it. That's about all I have to say. I am going to start with a disclaimer. I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. I've made notes, but there's no guarantee I'm actually going to follow them, which means I could be talking about anything. It could be swearing, it could be themes of an adult nature, or it could just be bog standard waffle. Proceed at your own caution. As I say, thank you very much for joining me on this podcast. It is a lovely sunny March afternoon, and one of my neighbours is working in his back garden. He's doing something with drilling bricks. I'm not entirely sure what, but if you hear noise in the background, that will be him. I had hoped to record today's podcast from our spare room with my knitting bookshelf in the background. I've got a big shelf of, knitting books, hence why I call it my knitting bookshelf. However, when I tried earlier, it was about half, if you think the middle half, was my bookshelf, and the other half was boxes and ironing boards. Well, ironing board singular, we only have one. So it didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. It probably would have worked if you had zoomed in, but by the time you'd zoomed in so that you could get rid of all of the clutter, you would just have my nose. So, yeah, I'm going to have a play around, see if I can work something out for next time. But this is my aim. My long-term aim is to move away just from a plain blank wall. I had problems with editing of episode 2. The software I use, pointing in that direction where the computer is called OpenShot. And it runs incredibly slowly on the computer. To the point that when I was trying to edit episode 2, it took me half an hour to edit about 5 minutes of footage. This is not good. There is another program we've got on the computer called DaVinci. I was going to say Marco Polo for some reason, but yeah, it's called DaVinci. But the way that is set up is so completely different to OpenShot. It would mean learning everything from scratch all over again, which I can do, but it's going to take me time. So, although from a viewer's perspective, it may seem that episode 2 and episode 3 have come quite close together, as far as I'm concerned, they are quite a way apart, about a month apart. Hopefully, I can get this one edited a little bit quicker. I'll have to try and talk really, really quickly to make it really, really short. Since the last episode, I have had my first COVID vaccination, for which I am incredibly pleased. I'm not sure quite why I was called, but I'm not going to argue that the fact I was. It seems now there's some kind of argument about vaccines coming from the EU to the UK. I have no idea when my next vaccination is going to be, but I am in the system. I have started the process. James, my husband, and I have also been doing some gardening. Last weekend we were out on the first day of spring and we saw one of the honeybees going around all of the daffodils, trying to collect pollen, which was quite exciting. We planted some wildflowers, which were given to us as favours from a wedding in October 2019. A couple of weeks before that, we were in there planting lily of the valley. So hopefully all of these will spring up and attract even more bees to our garden. We also had two very, very bold and very inquisitive robins. Literally, as soon as our back was turned, they would be jumping onto the flower bed to try and go after whatever food we had. I have also been introduced to a website which has a massive library of folk music. Now, I don't think I've mentioned this before or not, I can't remember, but I play the recorder. Yes, the same as the one you learnt at school. No, it's not always squeaky and awful. Yes, it is a proper musical instrument. Now, playing the recorder and having in the past played the violin, logically folk music would be something I'm interested in. But it's not, I mean, it's something I know about, but it's not something that I've really invested a lot of time in. However, now I have access to this amazing repository of folk music, it is something I can look into a little bit more. It's certainly good practice for sight reading. For non-musicians, sight reading is when you look at a piece of music for the first time and try and play it straight off with no rehearsal. It's something I try and do from time to time to keep my brain ticking over and thinking about what I'm doing, rather than just playing the same old pieces again and again and again and getting stuck into a rut. So that is quite an exciting discovery. So I have one unexpected finished object, which is this, the Sockhead slouch hat. I can't remember who the designer is, but I will put her name on the screen, and I will put all of the information, along with information about everything else I talk about, in the description box right underneath. So a couple of years ago, I knit myself a Sockhead slouch hat out of some very nice yarn I bought in America. I don't have any pictures of me wearing it. I don't have any video footage of me wearing it. I only have one clip of me talking about it whilst it's hanging out of a drawer. But it was a really nice yarn. It was kind of a greeny browny, really suited my colours. The problem is with this lovely gorgeous hat is I've lost it. The last time James, my husband, and I remember it being in the flat, I had just come back from shopping, and James said to me, "Oh, did you want to move your hat out of that bag before I put the bags away, because I don't want you to lose it?" So I did, and I have no idea where it is. I've looked for it, James has looked for it, neither of us can find it. So I thought, I know, if I make another one, that is a surefire way of making sure that the original hat turns up. The original hat has not yet turned up. And I am slightly annoyed because it was very nice yarn. The biggest problem is that because the yarn came from America, it's not a hat I can easily reknit and replace. I could get the yarn from America, but it would probably be quite expensive and not necessarily worth it just for one skein of yarn. So I have knitted a new one in this, which is West Yorkshire Spinners Silent Night, which is a sparkly yarn. Should be visible if I do that. This was part of the yarns that my husband gave me as a Christmas present. So it's, for me, that's quite a quick knit up between being given the yarn and the yarn actually being knitted into a usable, workable object. I have still got some more of it. This hat did not use the whole 100 grams, so I will probably at some point in the future make myself some socks, but using that as the cuffs, heels, toes. Yes, one unexpected finished object. I only have one whip to talk about this week, which is my sock yarn scrap blanket, which I like to think of as a cacophony of colour. So one of my creative aims this year was to put the rainbow section in my sock yarn blanket. So that's a bit in the middle. What I didn't realise is that I hadn't knitted a large majority of the bottom right hand corner, and I needed to do that before I put the rainbow section in. So rather than holding up the blanket and trying to show you exactly what's what, here is a bit of footage I filmed yesterday. I thought it was far easier to put the blanket on the bed and record it whilst I was talking about it than it would be to hold it up in front of the camera. So this is the blanket as it stands. It's about half finished. The rainbow coloured panel is going to go along here at the top there. This is the section that I have been working on this year. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Those are all the new squares I have put on this year, which means there are just 8 more squares here to finish before I can put in the rainbow section. Since recording that yesterday, I have put in 1 more square, which is that peach and pink stripy one. I have realised from putting the blanket out on the bed, it's not as wide as I thought it was. I have the option to carry on as I was going, or I have the option of adding 2 rows onto the right hand side here, which would mean adding on 40 extra squares. Part of my brain is saying, don't be ridiculous, it'll be absolutely fine as it is. And the other louder half of my brain is saying, you don't want to make it, put it on the bed and spend the rest of the time looking at it thinking it could have been wider and I should have made it differently. So, because I like a nice easy life, I'm going to be putting 2 extra stripes, 2 extra rows on the side of the blanket here to make it a little bit wider on the bed. Which means there is every chance I'm not going to be able to complete the rainbow section of the blanket until after the summer. This is getting quite heavy on my lap now. There is going to come a point where it is just too warm for me to have that on my lap as I'm knitting. So we will see how we get on. But I'm really pleased with the way this is turning out. It's so beautiful, it's so colourful. My aim is not to have 2 squares exactly the same. So the way I've done it, that yes, you've got the plain colours like this, but then if I have scraps of yarn, as I had here, I will knot them all up together using a fisherman's knot, colloquially known as the magic knot. It's not magic, it's a fisherman's knot, to make extra squares. So this one here, I had a small scrap of pink, 2 scraps of purple, which I then put in with a grey for that lovely little square there. So that is what I have been working on. The yellow socks that I was talking about last week, they are still exactly as they were. After they kept going wrong, I didn't want to be knitting on them and risk them going wrong and risk getting more and more frustrated with them. I have lots of Christmas sock yarn and I am itching to cast on another pair of Christmas socks. However, I feel I should finish off some of the socks I already have. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up with new cast-ons and the old cast-ons are going to be left in their project bags, languishing even further. So that is the aim for the future once I've run out of enthusiasm for this, which won't be soon. I also have, as another non-knitting finished object, this, which in fairness, calling it a finished object is possibly a bit of a cheat. So back, ooh, it's doing weird things with the light. Do you know what? I could just sit here all day doing that and just watch the light. Anyway, back in 2019, I was staff at the World Scout Jamboree in America, and I bought myself 3 bright orange t-shirts for work because that was our team colour. Orange is not a colour I wear a lot of, let alone having 3 t-shirts in the house of the same colour. So I've decided to tie-dye one of them. It looks like this. There we go. So I did this in the washing machine, which is possibly why the tie-dyes are slightly muted. James did suggest that it hadn't worked dramatically well because I'd put it in the washing machine rather than done hand-dyed cold dyes. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't make a difference. But actually, I think it does. However, on the plus side, it isn't bright orange anymore. There you go, before and after. Now, there is every chance I'm going to be using this one around the house, in the garden. Maybe I could even take up yoga now I've got a tie-dye t-shirt. And the other knitting adjacent thing I have done this week is mending my needles. So these, I think, were a pair of needles that came on the front of a magazine. They had pink plastic tips at the end. The tip came off one of the two and I lost it. So I have pulled off the plastic from the second one of the two and replaced the tops with beads. So it was a pretty easy fix. I just had to shave a little bit of the wood at the top so that the bead would fit on, and then stuck them on with super glue. So yeah, they are now a usable pair of needles. Again, just using everything I already had in the house. And now the exciting bit, stash enhancement. I said in episode 1, I don't normally buy a lot of yarn, with the exception of Christmas sock yarn. Also, I buy yarn if we go away. I buy souvenir yarn, but as we've been in lockdown now for a year, I'm not going to be buying souvenir yarn anytime soon. What I do have this time though is all of this. About 3 years ago, I bought 2 balls of milk bottle from West Yorkshire Spinners for a project which never happened. Milk bottle is a really good white yarn for doing contrasting heels, toes, cuffs for Christmas socks. However, I don't need 200 grams worth of it. I don't dislike pink as a colour. It looks very good on roses and cherry blossoms and lipstick and all sorts of things. What I absolutely loathe is the idea that if you're female, you're automatically going to like pink. Need a pen? Oh, you're a lady who needs a pen. Have a pink pen. You like gardening? Oh, you're a lady who likes gardening. Have some pink gardening tools. You like fishing? Oh, you're a lady who likes fishing. Have a pink fishing rod, etc., etc., etc. So as a general rule, I avoid the colour pink. However, in my blanket, I'm trying to get every colour and every shade and all the rest of it. And I don't have a lot of pink yarns. So I thought I'd dime some up myself. And this is what I've ended up with. These have all been done with Kool-Aid, food colouring gel, or food dye, just the liquidy stuff. Food colouring, that's the word. So, don't know why I couldn't remember the word, but I couldn't. To dye yarn, you need the protein from the yarn, heat and acid. The Kool-Aid sachets come with citric acid as part of the drink, which is why they can be used for dyeing, because they have the acid and the colour all together. For the food gels, I've used white vinegar as my acid to fix the colour. And the heat either comes from boiling it in a saucepan or by colouring the yarn and then putting it into the microwave. Wrap it in cling film, shove it in the microwave. So yes, these are my colours. 3 shades of pink. This one I think was actually done with the purple dye, the purple Kool-Aid. But it's kind of come out a dusky kind of pink. This one was done with food gel, but only a tiny touch of food gel to try and make it a nice light pink. And that one was done with a whole packet of red Kool-Aid with a tiny touch of food gel to make it a little bit more vibrant. This one I did with food gel. I'd tried to do equal amounts of red and yellow. I don't think it quite worked. It's not quite, it's a rather red, dark red type shade of orange. Gorgeous, but not the colour I was aiming for. That one, I think I might have been trying for yellow, but again, I've ended up with kind of like a very bright yellowy orange. But again, it doesn't matter. All of these are being done for fun. This one is orange with white flecks. So I had kind of wound this out to make a nice big skein, and then I'd tied off bits along it to give the white patches. So that's come out almost as I expected it to. I wasn't sure what shade of orange I was going to end up with, but the white flecks have turned out perfectly. For this one, I made up 2 ramekins. One was a mixture of green food dye and vinegar. The other was red food dye and vinegar. And I put each end of the mini skein into it and just let it soak in. And then took all of that out and put it into the microwave, wrapped in cling film to fix it. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I am so excited to try knitting it up. I am so excited to see what it turns out as. And now I've got 20 extra squares on my blanket. I can find out. This one I think was blue gel, but then I had half a packet of the Kool-Aid, which I sprinkled over the top and kind of ground into the yarn with a spoon before putting it into the microwave to fix the purple. So that's how that one's ended up, with a kind of a mottled purple on top of the blue. This I think was supposed to be purple. It was, from memory, the second half of the packet of Kool-Aid with a tiny bit of blue gel to try and make it a deeper purpley blue. That didn't quite work out, so it's ended up as a variegated blue. Not that I'm complaining. All of these are being done for fun. As long as I have nice bright colours that I'm happy to put into my blanket, then it's a success. Even if the colours and the shades haven't turned out anything like I expected it to, if I want to put them onto my blanket, it's a success. And the final one is this one, which was the whole sachet of purple Kool-Aid. So again, there you go, nice purpley shade. It's a lighter shade than I was expecting. I was kind of expecting it to be a deeper royal purple. I was going to say I was expecting it to be the same sort of shade as my phone case, which of course you can't see. So that's a really stupid comparison. So because I wanted to see what this one looked like when it was knit up, I have already put a square of it in there, in my blanket, which is that one there. So that is the self-dyed purple yarn, knotted alongside the original white milk bottle yarn. So that is the best comparison I can give of a before and after. Unsurprisingly, I have more scraps of yarn that I want to dye, and more colours and more ideas of what I want to do. So that's going to be quite fun, I think. Fun for me anyway. I'm going to round up today's episode by talking about books. Firstly, here's this one. So in the last episode, I was talking about some earrings that I'd made, and I thought to myself, I am pretty sure I have seen a pattern on Knitty for knitted earrings made with jewellery wire, which I had. And the pattern itself mentioned that Romy Hill, the person who had designed the earrings on Knitty, had also written a book, which is this book. I can't remember if it was the beginning of this month or the end of last month, we put in a big Amazon order. There was all sorts of bits and pieces that we needed. So I've got this one secondhand from Worcester County Council. There you go. Worcester County Council. So this book is obviously one which has been read by other people. It's got a bit of a history to it, which I just kind of like that. I think secondhand books have got that bit of character that first-hand books don't necessarily. I have had a brief look through here to see what kind of patterns there are. The first thing I need to do is track down some jewellery wire, which is not a massive priority at the moment. I'm holding this at a funny angle because if I do like that, it will reflect all the light off and just be very uncomfortable. So there we go. Elements of Style by Rosemary Hill, who is on Instagram as Romy Hill. The next one is a book I was talking about last time. I can't remember if I had started to read it or if I was midway through reading it. But it is this one, The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. It is a story about Cora, who escapes from a plantation in Georgia to try and travel north. So I wanted to read this so that I could learn about the Underground Railroad as a part of history. I'm going to say it didn't do that. The way it addresses the Underground Railroad is by literally creating a railroad underground. So it talks about boxcars that travel from station to station under the ground, which works for the purpose of the book. It absolutely works, but it's not historically accurate in that way. The writing was very good. It was very vivid, quite graphic and quite violent in places. But I can't say I came away feeling that I'd learnt more about the way the Underground Railroad worked in reality, in real terms. I would also say the ending was slightly disappointing. I was expecting there to be some big dramatic build up and big dramatic thing kind of happening at the very end, or some kind of pithy takeaway message or something like that, and it wasn't there. It was just, oh, okay, kind of an ending, which I felt was a weak ending given the rest of the book. Now, as I've said, this has got a lot of quite graphic violence in it. There's executions and rape and assault and murder and all sorts of really quite nasty stuff. Because the way the Underground Railroad was described was completely fabricated, completely made up, I was also left wondering if the amount of violence that was described was also made up and kind of based in a fantasy world rather than in any historical reality, which I think was a shame, because I don't want to come away from reading a book about slavery wondering if actually that was really what it was like. I would definitely recommend reading this. The writing is very vivid. The plot is well structured. I found myself wanting to carry on reading, and it was a page turner. It did have me gripped. There is one death in there which was pretty predictable. But apart from that, yeah, I would say it is a worthwhile book to read, but beware, it is kind of graphic with the violence. And then I fell into my habits of reading non-fiction, which is this one, Fighting for Your Life by Lisa Wilder. I couldn't read her surname backwards in my camera. So Lisa was a paramedic in London, and this book is a collection of all of her stories. Again, some of them really quite graphic, really quite brutal, some of them very funny. Again, not everybody survives. So I bought this in the works for £3. Recommended retail price on the back is £8.99. I would say it was worth £3, not necessarily worth £8.99. I didn't feel that there was any great moral to the story she was telling us. There was no overarching narrative. It was literally a set of different stories of different calls that she's been on. I like watching a lot of emergency medicine programs on TV, so a lot of what she wrote about wasn't a massive surprise to me. There were a couple which were real eye openers, but a lot of it I was like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Those are kind of stories I've seen on the TV with regards to how badly people have been injured, how ridiculously stupid bystanders can be, and so forth. So I think I read this in about the space of a week. Some of the chapters were quite short, which helped, and I did find myself wanting to read what the next story was going to be. So yeah, I'm honestly not sure if I would recommend it or not. It was a nice book to read, a nice book to fill time, but not one I would rush to read again. So that is it. I have finished talking about all the things I wanted to talk about. After I've finished here, James and I are going to go into the garden and plant some herbs. And I am going to carry on knitting on my blanket so I have more to talk about next time. I hope to see you then. Take care.